Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz. He's the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Congressman, right now there's this unanimously approved bipartisan compromise in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that would, in fact, give Congress some serious oversight of any final nuclear deal that might be worked out with Iran. What do you think about that?
Well, the fact that it was unanimous says a lot about the strength on both sides of the aisle. I have serious concerns about such an agreement, but I do agree that Congress ought to have a role in it. The people, and particularly the Senate, should have an opportunity to review this. So that's a good sign. The
president, the White House now says they're willing to go along, not veto this legislation. You think they blinked?
Well, I'm concerned more about results, and there was a lot of blustering there from the White House, but the fact that they came up with a unanimous conclusion to this says a lot for Senator Corker and his leadership in moving this through.
At the same time, we're getting word that the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, has now authorized the delivery of missiles to Iran, even before there is a deal, even before sanctions are supposed to be removed. What do you make of that?
I think Putin is still on the move. I'm worried about what he's posturing to do in Ukraine. I'm worried about what his proximity to Iran and what he's doing there. I think President Obama lacks credibility on the world stage, particularly in the Middle East. We have failed on many fronts there. I don't think our friends believe us, and I don't think our enemies fear us, and that's a problem.
Certainly is. The U.S., the White House today announced that the U.S. is about to provide another $200 million in what is being described as humanitarian aid to Iraq. Iraq being an oil-rich country. It has very close ties with Iran right now. Are you going to vote in favor of that $200 million expenditure to provide that kind of humanitarian aid to Iraq?
It makes it increasingly difficult to do so unless you know what the results are. We have poured literally hundreds of billions of dollars into Iraq and Afghanistan, into the Middle East, but what kind of results? I mean, how many times does the American taxpayer have to fund this, and to what end, and where is that money going? And when you talk to the Special Inspector General for Iraqi reconstruction, the cigar and the Sigur and the cigar and the inspectors, we have less oversight and less accountability, and it's a problem, not only in Iraq, but also in Afghanistan.
Yeah, that Inspector General for Afghanistan says literally tens of billions of dollars in U.S. aid can't even be accounted for. They don't know where it is. If you read that report that just came out last week, it's pretty depressing, I must say. But getting back to Iraq right now, the U.S. also wants to provide some sophisticated military equipment, more of it, to Iraq, to the Iraqi military, even though the Iraqi military abandoned armored personnel carriers, tanks, where they simply walked away, dropped their weapons. Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq, in the face of that ISIS onslaught. Do you have confidence that any additional military equipment provided to the Iraqi military won't wind up in the hands of ISIS or other terror groups?
Well, that's the concern, is that it does end up in the hands of these nefarious actors that do want to harm the United States, Iraq in particular. I want to know what kind of oversight, what sort of U.S. military presence and training do we have there? We can't just keep sending them money and assets, because a lot of that comes back to haunt us. And I'm not convinced, the administration has not made the case that this is what has to happen.